All right, welcome back. Hope you all enjoyed your 4th of July holiday. Today, we're continuing our RBT exam practice question series where we're going through some RBT questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and our combo pack, which is our best deal. It includes everything. As usual, when you pass, please let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. As always, comments, questions are welcome. Email me or leave a comment below and I will get back to you. Work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 1. Your BCBA asks you to probe what is currently in your client's communication repertoire. What does your BCBA want you to do? What is the question asking? Well, the question is asking about what the BCBA has requested. And what this question is really trying to determine is if you know what probe is and if you know what repertoire is. That's why I always tell you, especially when you're studying, when you're doing practice questions and you see a term come up like probe or repertoire, you need to start defining them in your head. The more you do that, the more fluent you're going to be with the terms. And so when you read a question like this, you don't have to sit there and think about what is probe, what is repertoire. It's just going to start coming to you. In this case, your BCBA wants you to probe, meaning what? Meaning we're trying to see what the client can and can't do by asking them to engage in different skills. Probe their repertoire, and the repertoire is just their set of skills. And in this case, their communication repertoire, so their communication skills. So we need to find out what kind of communication skills does our client have. So A, reinforce each approximation of your client's functional communication. When we reinforce approximations, what are we doing? Well, we're shaping. We're obviously not shaping here, right? We're just probing. Probe is before intervention. It comes before we start doing skill acquisition, okay? We're just trying to see where we need to get started. B, ask your client to talk with you to determine what they can and can't communicate. Okay, much better, right? The probe part is asking our client to talk with us. Okay, what can you and can't you do? And then by determining what they can and can't do, we're going to start to identify the repertoire. And again, the repertoire is just their overall set of skills. C, present your client with different items and toys and measure their reaction. To me, that sounds like more of a preference assessment than a probe or a skill assessment. And then D, continuously measure every instance of a client saying the word dog. D is very precise. With D, we've already probably identified the repertoire, and now we've picked a goal or a skill and have started to measure it. We're not there yet. Probing typically happens initially before we start teaching the skills. With probing, we're just figuring out what the client can and can't do, trying to determine a repertoire, and we're going to do that by asking the client to talk with you to determine what they can and can't communicate. A 1-year-old is standing next to a couch playing with toys. One toy is out of reach, so they grab for it. Their mom says, say, toy, and the 1-year-old says, toy. So the mom gives them the toy. What is the consequence as it relates to receiving the toy? Very basic functional communication training here. We're using a naturally occurring situation. We know the client, or in this case, the 1-year-old wants the toy. The mom notices that it's out of reach, so the mom uses this opportunity to get the client or the 1-year-old to say toy. It's not what the question is asking about. What is the question asking about? The question is asking about the consequence. And it's really important in the application questions that you don't get lost in the details. We really have to be smart and identify what the question wants to know. The question wants to know what is the consequence as it relates to receiving the toy. So in reality, it's a very simple question because receiving the toy is actually the consequence. Let's think about it. The toy is out of reach. So the mom says, say toy, that's the antecedent. The 1-year-old says toy, which is the response. The consequence is what? The consequence is the 1-year-old receives the toy. Positive reinforcement, hopefully in the future, this language increases, but receiving the toy, or in other words, the mom giving the toy, is the consequence. A, the toy is out of reach. That is not the antecedent. That is the motivating operation, okay? Deprivation of that toy is increasing the value. The 1-year-old is by the couch is not a consequence, okay? It's happening before the consequence occurs. The mom says, say toy, that's the antecedent. The mom giving the toy is the consequence. So once again, the mom says, say toy is our antecedent. The 1-year-old says toy is our response. The mom giving the toy is the consequence. Being able to identify the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence will make these type of questions much easier, especially when we're talking about consequences, prompts, reinforcement, MOs, all of our parts of contingencies. We need to know, okay, what is happening in the question. So first things first, we identify what is the question asking, and then we figure out our A, B, C. Which of the following answer choices represents a reinforcement schedule that would require you to deliver reinforcement every 4th, 5th, or 6th time the client responds? Basic reinforcement schedule questions. I don't want you missing any basic reinforcement schedule questions. They're so easy, okay? You need to spend just a little time with the study guide studying to really hammer this home and cement it in your brain, okay? So we have 4 basic types of reinforcement schedules. We have fixed ratios, fixed intervals, variable ratios, variable intervals. When we say the word fixed, we mean unchanging. When we say variable, we mean average. When we say ratio, we mean response. When we say interval, we mean time. So all you're doing is mixing and matching these different parts to create these reinforcement schedules. So if you have an FR, fixed ratio, you have a fixed number of responses. If you have a VI, a variable interval, you have an average interval. In this case, we're going to deliver a reinforcement every 4th, 5th, or 6th time. So is that going to be fixed or is it going to be variable? Well, it's obviously not going to be fixed if it's 4th, 5th, or 6th, right? It's going to be changing. It's going to be on an average. Second question you ask yourself is, am I dealing with time or responses? Well, here we're dealing with the number of responses. So we're dealing with a ratio schedule. So we need some sort of variable ratio schedule. We can eliminate A and B because it's a fixed ratio. So now we need to find on what average are we delivering reinforcement. How do we do that? Well, we just add up at what response rate does the client get reinforcement and then divide it by the total. So we have 4 responses plus 5 responses plus 6 responses, which we're going to divide by 3 and ultimately get 5. So which of the following answer choices represents a reinforcement schedule that would require us to deliver reinforcement on average every 4th, 5th, or 6th time? It's going to be a VR5. Again, if you don't understand how we got there, you don't understand basic reinforcement schedules, go back to the study guide, really review it. These should be very easy questions on the exam. I don't want you missing these. A client wants to improve their reading speed. Monday, they read 50 words per minute. On Tuesday, they read 60 words per minute. And on Wednesday, they read 50 words per minute. How many words per minute are they reading on average? Okay, an average question. You might be saying, well, why are you giving me a math question? Well, as an RBT, we need to learn how to determine some basic averages, basic totals, that kind of thing. How do you find an average? Well, we just did it, right? You add up your total and you divide it by the number of points or data points. So our total data here is going to be 50 plus 50 plus 60. And we're going to divide that by 3. Now, how do we get that? Well, we know the client wants to improve the reading speed. On Monday, they had a data point. On Tuesday, they had a data point. And then on Wednesday, they had a data point. So how many words per minute on average are they reading? Again, we need to add these up and divide by 3. So 50 plus 60 plus 50 divided by 3 is going to be 53. On average, they're reading 53 words per minute. How often should RBTs record session notes? Okay, this is kind of how the flow of the test is going to go. You might get a couple tricky questions in a row. And then, boom, you're hit with a easy question. The easy questions, you just need to be confident, trust your preparation, don't overthink it. For instance, this question, how often should RBTs record session notes? Well, I know all of you know how often you need to record session notes. Is it after every session, at the end of each week, after every session if you receive supervision, or after every session if something of importance occurred? Well, we know it's not at the end of each week because we have to do it every session. After every session if something of importance occurred implies that important things don't occur sometimes during session, which isn't the case. Every session we have, something's going to happen of note, of interest, okay? We need session notes so we can share that with the team. And then C, after every session, if they receive supervision, well, certainly, but not only if you receive supervision. Even if you don't receive supervision, actually more important to record session notes if you don't receive supervision, because again, you're sharing what happened with the team. So how often do you need to record these session notes? It's going to be A, after every session. Jan has been working in a school as an RBT for the past 6 months with the same BCBA and the same teacher. Today, Jane was told that the current teacher was taking a leave of absence and that a new teacher would be starting today. Jane notices that the new teacher did not read the client's treatment plan as incorrectly handling some behaviors. What should Jane do? It's an ethics question. Let's start there. And we're trying to figure out what Jane's role is as an RBT in this current setup. First things first, what is the primary role of an RBT? It's implementation. Jane is in that classroom to implement the treatment plan. RBTs do not train alone, okay? They certainly do not lead the team alone. This is a collaborative team with the BCBA and the teacher and the school. So Jane is in a tough spot, okay? Jane knows this new teacher is not handling things correctly, but what can she possibly do about it? A, sit the teacher down and walk through the treatment plan step by step. Is that Jane's job? No. Is Jane qualified to do that? No. Now, Jane has worked there a while. Maybe she knows the treatment plan in and out. She still isn't qualified to go step by step. Because at the end of the day, if Jane makes a mistake, it comes back on the teacher and the supervisor. Okay, Jane is not, it's not her responsibility to sit this teacher down and walk her through the treatment plan. What about B? Start updating the treatment plan to reflect the change of teacher. Again, not Jane's responsibility as an RBT. Okay, RBTs know what their role and responsibility is on the team. Additionally, we're working within the confines of this teacher's classroom, within the school, and we have to respect that. We have to respect her area. We have to respect her as a professional. This is not our classroom. This is not Jane's classroom. Jane has her client who she's working with on behavior, but that's where her job ends. C, let her supervisor know immediately and manage the behavior as best she can. Yes, so as soon as Jane can, let the supervisor know, the supervisor will handle it, but don't just give up and stop managing behavior because you see the teacher doing it incorrectly. Maybe you can model it, right? If Jane is doing it correctly, maybe she's modeling it. Maybe the teacher will ask Jane, hey, how should I do this? What we don't want to do is try to show up the teacher in any way. We don't want to tell the teacher how wrong they are as the RBT because it's not your job as the RBT. And then D, report the teacher to the principal as soon as possible. Again, you're overstepping your boundaries. Jane needs to know her boundaries. She needs to know her role in the context of this team. The best thing she can do is let the supervisor know immediately what is going on and continue managing the behavior as best she can. Evaluate the following answer choices. Which one would be the best way to determine if an item functions as a punisher for a client? So punishers, what do punishers do? Punishers decrease behavior, right? We're not worried so much about the form, but the function. And with the punisher, it's going to decrease. So how are we going to determine if an item functions as a punisher? For instance, if I say, let's do a reinforcement assessment, how could we possibly know if something is reinforcing? How can we know if something's punishing? Well, we need to look at behavior. Do we look at current behavior or do we look at future behavior when evaluating consequences and their effects on behavior? Think about that question. If you've been studying with me for a while, I've gone over this before. I'm going to go over it again and again and again because it's very important. If we want to determine if an item is reinforcing or punishing, we look at future behavior. Consequences impact future behavior. So A, look at client's current behavior. If it decreases, the item is a punisher. What's wrong with this? Well, we're not looking at current behavior. We're looking at future behavior. B, look at the client's future behavior. If it decreases, the item is a punisher. Great. B looks like exactly what we're looking for. Now, if you said, well, how can we be sure? We can't be 100% sure. You're right. However, in the context of this question, so far B is our best answer. We're looking at future behavior. If it decreases, we can best assume the item is a punisher. C, look at the client's future behavior. If it decreases or increases, the item is a punisher. Well, if it's decreasing and increasing, can we say for sure it's a punisher? Well, no. If it's increasing as well, that's not punishment. So C, we can't say for sure. And then D, look at the client's current and future behavior. If it decreases, the item is a punisher. Again, what is wrong with this? Well, we're not looking at current behavior. We're looking at future behavior. The best answer here is going to be B. Look at the client's future behavior. To determine consequences, we look at future behavior. If it decreases, punishment, the item is a punisher. The skill acquisition plan contains several parts that are all essential. Which of the following answer choices is the first step in creating and implementing a skill acquisition plan? All right, so RBTs need to know the steps in a skill acquisition plan because going back to our question earlier, your role is not creating these plans, but you are assisting. RBTs are great assistants. We assist in training, creating plans. You will help create these skill acquisition plans. So what is the first part in creating a skill acquisition plan? What do we need to do at the very beginning? Do we A, identify measurement procedures? Well, before we can identify measurement procedures, what do we need? Well, we need something to measure, right? What we're picking to measure is going to dictate how we measure it, not the other way around. So B, identify the skill to be acquired, is much more apt here, right? We want to identify the skill to be acquired first and foremost. After we have a skill that can be acquired, then we can start to take baseline. We can write interventions. We can do measurement procedures. We can review data, but not until we actually have a skill that we've chosen to be acquired. That's the very first step. Same thing with C. You can't collect and review data until you have something to collect and review data on. And then D, create a goal. Well, before we can have a goal, what skill are we addressing? So at the very beginning, before anything else, the first step, we need to identify the skill to be acquired. Finally, this assessment consists of manipulating antecedents and consequences in order to determine the function of a learner's behavior. Pretty simple definition question. And the reason we do this definition is because a lot of RBTs find themselves unfamiliar with this. Let's talk about assessment real quick. With assessment, indirect assessments especially, you're not actually manipulating anything. You're just gathering data. Most direct assessments, you're not actually manipulating anything. You're just gathering data. So if you're actually manipulating antecedents and consequences, what are we doing? We just said, A, indirect observation. We're not manipulating anything, right? And that's kind of a misnomer because with an indirect observation, what are we observing, right? B and C, event recording and ABC recording. With event recording, you're basically recording how many times something happens. You're not manipulating anything. You're observing. Same with ABC recording. You're looking at antecedents and behaviors and consequences and writing them down and recording them, but not manipulating anything as they occur. That leaves us with D, a functional analysis. And a functional analysis, again, another thing RBTs assist with, will actually see us manipulating antecedents and consequences to try to determine the function of a learner's behavior. The best type of assessment to determine the function is a functional analysis. All right, I'm glad you were here to go through our questions together. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we put out a new RBT video. Sundays, we have our Let's Learn ABA series. And then Friday and Saturdays, those are our BCBA days. So when you do prepare for your BCBA exam, make sure you come back and join us. For now, check out rbtexamreview.com for study materials. As usual, work hard, study hard,